pleasant morning to you. The program is the Dailies, where we keep you updated with all that is happening, where we're seeing that another tweet concerning the little clash that happened in Delta State, where it is coming to understanding, according to the Senate President, that possibly this might be as a result of some mercenaries that were being sponsored to actually do that, and then we are hoping that people behind that will be brought to book. And we'd love to talk a little about the fact that today is World Oral Health Day. You know what World Oral Health Day means, talking about taking care of your mouth, your dental care, and all of that. So we will just talk a little about that. I'm Seda Elisha Dasho, and I'm doing the program alongside Rachel Tazi. Good morning.
Good morning,
How you
Sally.
doing, Rachel?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. So before we go into the whole things happening in Nigeria, today happens to be World Oral Health Day. And the theme for today is a happy mouth is a happy body. And we know what that means, that when you have a healthy mouth, of course the entire body will be happy. Just when you have a toothache, you know what that means.
Yes.
Every part of your body tends to be in pain. And I think it's very important because a number of people tend to neglect their oral health.
Yeah.
And I think that we're all guilty of that because we just feel that it's just my tooth, so it doesn't really matter. So we don't really take care of it. And even though it's advisable that we visit at least once in a year, visit a dental hospital to just check if there's need for any fillings and all of that, but we hardly do that. We're seeing that it's becoming a really troubling thing because according to some studies, it's been stated that about 3.5 billion people in the world presently are going through one oral health disease or another.
Yeah.
And then initially it wasn't this much, but because of the negligence coming from a number of us, and that is why we're having that. And that is why this year it's important that we actually look at the fact that a happy mouth is a happy body, because when you take care of your tooth, you take care of everything that's to do with your dental health, they say that even your body will be happy and all of that. So I think it's important. It might not really be a big deal to a number of people online when we're talking about the World Kidney Day, when everybody's trying to see them go for free kidney checkup. But believe me, it started like this. We have even mouth cancer. That is how badly things are now. So you cannot really take anything for granted. And then the way talking about our oral care, if anything should affect your mouth, you're talking about your head, your ear eventually get affected, your throat eventually get affected, even your eye and all of that, because these are vital organs that are connected. And I think it's really important that we all take this very important to at least develop the habit of visiting a dental hospital at least once a year, and then it's very important as well to brush our teeth twice. I think this is something that we just feel for a number of people, brushing in the morning is a mandatory thing because you don't want when you talk to people your mouth to smell. But how about before going to bed, because there are a number of things that are hidden.
One of the most important.
Very important. So I think it's another thing we also have to develop that habit eventually. I mean, they say practice makes perfect. So when we start practicing it, it becomes part of us, and then we see that we'll not find it difficult to actually do that. So I think it's important that everybody take this very important.
I think dental visit is one of the most underrated healthcare aspect of our life. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the cavities that are dealing with you now probably started 3 years ago. That's to tell you that you haven't gone to the doctor for more than 5 years. And I think almost everybody in Nigeria is guilty. We're talking about only, I'm very sure that it's not more than 2% of our population. 2% is a lot. When we talk about 2%, we're talking about millions that do find themselves going to the dentist just for checkup, not because you started feeling a pain in your tooth, or because your gums are falling out, or because there's something that doesn't just feel normal because you woke up and one side of your gum is swollen or something like that. There are very few people that just go and check just to be okay. And it tells you that it's been years that you've not gone to see a dentist. And that's why this cavity is a problem, because cavities are slow, they are not fast. So it means if you were frequent going to your doctor at least once a year, it wouldn't be where it is at this time. So it tells you when last you went, or you have never even gone to see a dentist. And I think we always forget the basic things. Some things are always very simple, just like we talked about kidney the other day. We said most of the time is what we consume. We talked about water and all of these little things. And I think that when it comes to our Delta health, we can also lower it down to that level, brushing twice a day. Because in the end, it's sugar that is eating up your teeth. Those are the cavities and the rest. And you've eaten, don't say you have not taken anything sweet. You've eaten one snack or the other, you've drank one carbonated drink, you had sugar in your tea, you had sugar in whatever you took all day long.
Even the carbohydrate we consume is sugar.
It's sugar in the end of the day. And these things get trapped in our mouth, whether we like it or not. Our teeth are designed to trap food. It's normal. So you floss. Brushing is not enough. You floss at the end of the day and then gag with water. I mean, like 3 times a week. Just find yourself every day just putting salt inside the warm water and just gag, because you might think it's not doing anything, but it's killing the germs. It is that effective. You won't know it's that effective until when you find out that you have a swollen gum and you decided to do that for 3 days and you see the
definitely
it's gone.
Very effective.
Exactly. So what makes you think that just making that your regular practice is not going to be good enough? And then know your type of teeth. It is very essential, because sometimes our bad breath is not literally from our tongue, sometimes it's from our teeth. You also need to know your type of teeth and brushing method. A lot of us don't know how to brush. There's a way you are supposed to brush your teeth. There's a pattern and you have to learn it. You have to go a certain way when you're brushing your mouth. For me, I had to learn that because it's very important, because you have to know your type of teeth, then you have to know how to go about cleaning it and all of that. So that's oral health, the basics. Then before we can talk about going to the doctor, to just avoid certain things that could have been avoided.
Very, very important. You know, Richard is beginning to sound like a health practitioner with all of that, but thank you so much. You know, I also learned as well, you know, especially the aspect of using the salt once in a while. I think it's something I've not really, but I really think it's important we take that. And then for those who are fond of, you make mention of sugar, tobacco as well. You need to know how to brush. And then changing of our toothbrush.
It's important.
Changing of our toothbrush, at least I think according to the dental world, to talk about changing our toothbrush at least 3 times. I mean, for every 3 months.
3 months, you shouldn't go longer than that.
So I mean, in a year, you should have had 4 different toothbrushes. So I think it's important. Well, let's take a look at what our papers have for us this morning, and we shall start with the Matrix newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Zenith Bank appoints Dame Adaora Umeoji as GMD CEO. You can start with the details on the front page. And on Friendly, Super Eagles confirms Osimhen Owoni out. Fresh troubles for Emefiele as Senate uncovers 13 infractions in 30 trillion naira ways and means loan. Senate to invite Cardoso for questioning. Still on the Okoma killings, fresh facts emerge. Community leader says land dispute led to killing of soldiers in the community. Says families involved in the dispute highly placed, call for real investigation to unravel the truth. After meeting Tinubu, Oboriwori talks tough, says killers of military personnel in Delta will be brought to book. Akpabio fingers mercenaries as those who may be responsible for heinous crime. You can find details on page 3. And more it's been unraveled concerning this killing in Delta. And it just makes sense, because I know we kept on talking about certain things don't make sense. And now we are having a community head leader saying that it's land dispute. They should know better what led to the clash in the first place. And he said it's by highly placed people in that community. It's a land dispute. And now it makes sense to why top-ranking
officers were being assigned to
because that fact about what happened still doesn't make sense to me. That we'll have lieutenant colonels and majors going for a communal dispute clash and all of that, and then you can't help but wonder, well then if it is by highly placed people, then no wonder they could call and summon such military officials and all of that. And we're seeing Senate President saying mercenaries are responsible for such heinous acts, and I wouldn't agree less. We kept on saying, this is our soldiers. They are trained. Look at how they were. I can't imagine that a common community man will be able to just
take
out our soldiers.
Man,
I can't just help but wonder how, because it just shows us that our soldiers are not good enough, and I don't want to believe that they are not well trained for just common people in the community to take them out like that. And now it makes sense. In as much as it is a speculation from the Senate President, say maybe responsible for it, you can't help but wonder that it could be possible looking at the nature of how things happen. It's really sad, and then of course more investigations should be put into it. And if it's a land dispute, why are our soldiers involved? Why would you agree to be involved in land dispute? You are not. That is not what you were there for in the first place, and all of that. So I just hope that the truth
will eventually
be out, and it will really be heartbroken to see that our soldiers died despite being portrayed heroic. But it will be sad that if at the end of this investigation and the finding it turns out to be something that was not even their business in the first place, is no longer a heroic act, but then you just can't help but wonder that we have such lives just wasted in what shouldn't have been in the first place, and it's really sad.
Listening to the interview being done concerning this case, and just like you said, it broke my heart, and I just couldn't help but wonder, why would those soldiers be found in that place? Rachel, you remember I made mention that if they had died during a very severe war, I mean, these are gallant soldiers, and do you know what it entails to be a soldier in the first place? So dying is not a big deal to a soldier. In fact, dying is something of joy to them, because they die protecting their country. But Rachel, them dying here was really not worth it. This crisis was because for two families, Rachel, not a community.
Not a community.
Families, two families were involved. And look at what two families have caused. Now, just like you made mention, it was because of one of the families from Okolaba were the ones who were highly placed. And so, I mean, they felt they have enough money that you could order soldiers. Now, I have a question for the Nigerian government. What are some of those acts that guard the military? I know police have their acts. So almost all of these security bodies have their own, more like a constitution or something, the law rules that they abide by. What do the military abide with? Who is this family that could call us soldiers? Did you employ them?
That's it.
It's a question. I remember when there was a law that was being passed that there will be no longer VIP treatment. So for those who are attached to police, it will be taken out. So how comes we're soldiers involved in something?
Why did the soldiers go again?
Exactly. That is the number one question, Rachel. Secondly, is the fact that what was done, because definitely there, just like you made mention, something needs to be done about this, because believe me, if these soldiers had not died, I would have suggested that they should be court-martialed. What were you doing in a dispute that was supposed to be resolved by the police? We made mention of this from Monday, Richard, when this whole thing started. Anything that has to do with land dispute, family matters, if whether your livestock was being sold or something, you summon the police. There is a department that is in charge of that. So I think this really calls for a lot of reorientation of our army again. I think this whole security body needs to be orientated. Let them know what their primary responsibility is. We made mention of the fact that ideally our soldiers are not even supposed to be seen around.
They are not.
They are only meant for things that are very serious. That's made mention of the fact that all these terrorists, arms, bandits, and all of that. These are what we might say, okay, to complement the police, because I did even as the police are supposed to be going after looking for where these kids are and all of that. But because of the nature of the matter, and that is why the army is being deployed to do that. So I really, really think, even though here we're seeing the governor of the state saying that things are under control and all of that, and we saw when the army are saying that they are not, there was no any reprisal attack and all of that. But I just hope that more interrogation, more investigation should be done concerning this. And then possibly, just like I said, something should be done so I don't have a revisit of this.
Yeah.
Only God knows how many soldiers had to die in such a manner because of something as mere as a land dispute that should be resolved. So we look forward to seeing more steps, what the Senate will do about this, the government of the state, and also every other thing that is involved. And then those that are behind that, whether they are mercenaries or not, they need to be brought to book so that we'll be able to have sanity back again in our state and in the country entirely.
Still on the matrix, from NATI, FAAC allocation to federal government, state and local government areas increased by 23.56% in 2023. Bill seeking 5 months leave for widowers kill second reading at House of Reps. Nnamdi Kanu to remain in custody as court denies bail, orders accelerated hearing. And we have an entertainment news concerning our stars. You can find details on page 15. Senate extends implementation of 2.1 trillion naira 2023 supplementary appropriation to June 2024. Go and face your impeachment process, court tells Shaibu. You can find details on the front page and continue inside the paper. We have a picture story where we can see Vice President Shetima, and the caption is deepening capacity in the construction and mining sector. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, CBN leave restriction on FX access to importation of dairy products. More detail of that can be found on page 20. And on Edu Guba, only 6 parties have filed for nomination. This is coming from INEC, urges parties to stop granting unnecessary waivers to defectors. And here we're seeing that they're giving them till March 24 to be able to do that. So we hope that they'll be able to meet up with all of those deadlines before then. Why the court refused Nnamdi Kanu's fresh request for bail, you can find more. And also we're seeing Zenith Bank have appointed Adora, the first female GMD and CEO, and I think it's really encouraging that you read her portfolio. Quite educated and also beauty with brains. So you can do more by reading all that it took for her to be the first female GMD and CEO of the bank on page 19. And on Delta killings, 3 suspects nabbed, moved to Army headquarters in Asaba. With a rider here saying, Senate probes killing, calls for recruitment of more policemen. Also, we're having the governor brief Tinubu, says there won't be further attacks. Notes situation under control. Clark condemns killing, urges the military to exercise restraint. Investigate Delta killing, reps tax the military. Flag flown at half-mast as military begins 3-day mourning for slain soldiers. Civil society group call for unbiased investigation. And we have RULAC appeals against revenge, indiscriminate action on innocent civilians. Also, BSA military moves swap budgets to Okwama community. You can find more detail of that story on page 5. Edo Assembly directs the Chief Justice to set up committee on Shaibu's impeachment, which more can be found on page 10. We didn't renovate government house with 18 billion naira. This is coming from a Daily K. More detail also inside the paper. Also, we are having on NFF talking about sport appoint Finidi as a Super Eagles coach. You can find more detail. And we have a writer that says against Ghana-Mali friendliness. Shiroro Solar Generating Company new phase in energy transition plan. This is coming from the Vice President Shetima. More detail found on page 4. We have a picture here where we can see Ezefe Burial Committee visit Apabio. More detail inside the paper. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On leadership, troops rescued 32 kidnapped victims in Kaduna and Katsina. Daura appointed Zenith Bank GMD CEO. We have FAAC allocation increased by 23.56% in 1 year. This is a report coming from NETI. As federal government, state, local government shared 10.143 trillion naira in 2023. On impeachment, Edo Assembly tightens news on Shaibu. The big story: killing of 17 soldiers, panic in Bayelsa as troops launch manhunt for killers. Dear Silva trade wars over killings. There will be no further attacks, a statement from Delta governor. Killers may be mercenaries, says Senate, and Delta lawmakers beg military. Details can be found on page 4. Peace will return to Southeast once I'm released, a statement from Kanu. Federal government targets 70% fuel cost reduction, that is on the use of CNG. Reps move to grant widows 5 months leave. Benga Day, 3 others confirmed as AMCON MD and executive directors. You can find details on page 19, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, 10 killed, 48 injured in a lone trailer crash on Abuja-Kaduna highway. And I really think something needs to be done about all of these trailers and then some of the chaos they have been causing on the road. More detail found on page 9. Tinubu seek reps approval for judicial officers' new salaries. More detail inside the paper. Also on the big story here, Yakubu to parties on Edo-Ondo Guba. Be warned, INEC will stick to timetable and March 24th deadline. With the rider, 6 parties upload candidates' credential, 5 days to go. And we have IPAC new leadership pledges to partner with INEC. More detail can be found in the paper. Federal government begins distribution of 42,000 metric tons of free grains to release 53. I take that story again. Federal government begins distribution of 42,000 metric tons of free grains to release 58,500 metric tons of rice to markets. More detail found inside the paper. I never supported violence in the southeast. This is coming from Kanu. And outside we have Shaibu's story. Edo Assembly direct the Chief Justice to inaugurate probe panel. Nigeria loses $3 billion to solid minerals theft annually. This is coming from miners, and the reason why government needs to take total control of that. Killers of military personnel may be foreign mercenaries. This is coming from the Senate President Apabio. More detail found inside the paper. The picture story here is the INEC chairman, Yakubu, and together with other people involved in all of things being done concerning the election. You can find more detail in the paper, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, the big story: soldiers killing, Apabio fingers mercenaries. Senate calls for investigation, reps condemn act. Oborewori meets Tinubu, says situation under control, innocent citizens won't suffer. Edo Assembly directs CJ to set up 7-man panel to investigate petition against Deputy Governor. This is concerning the impeachment. FRSC boss talks tough as lone crash kills 10, injures 48 on Abuja-Kaduna highway. Troops foil multiple kidnap attempts in Plateau and Zamfara. Federal government, state, local government shared 10.143 trillion naira in 2023. FRC support for National Assembly revenue hearing yields 1.84 trillion naira. You can find details on page 25. Federal government gives condition for issuing mining license. A statement from Kanu: there's conspiracy to kill me. Demands transfer from DSS cell to Kuje prison. Reps kick as court rejects IPOP leaders' bail plea. Unilever to slash 7,500 jobs worldwide. You can find details on page 25. And then we have a picture story where we can see Vice Chairman S&P, Mr. Daniel Yagin, and Group Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari, at the Leadership Dialogue session held during the 2024 edition of the Sarah Week by S&P Global in Houston, United States yesterday. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Zenith Bank appoints Adele Ray the GMD CEO, which we've seen on most of the papers, and on net with 23.56%, Rise in revenue, federal government and state local government share 10.14 trillion naira in 2023. More detail found on page 5. NNPC to take FID on $25 billion Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline in December 2024. More detail found on page 10. Also, Bowore briefs Tinubu on Delta killings, says state taken aback by development. Assures situation is under control. You can find more detail in the paper. Still, we are having the picture during the Leadership Dialogue plenary session at the ongoing Creek Week conference there in Houston, where we can see Mede Kyari there. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail. We have another picture story at the top side of the paper. Do well to get this thing and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Kanu distances self from violence in Southeast. Court rejects his bail plea. Federal government, state, local government shared 10.143 trillion naira in 2023. The big story on the paper, Delta Governor meets Tinubu, Akpabio, NHRC weigh in on killing of 17 military men. We never bargain for what happened, a statement coming from Obori. And then killers of soldiers may be mercenaries, a statement from Senate President. Probe the killings, National Assembly tells armed forces. NHRC calls for persecution of culprits. Troops rescue 16 kidnapped victims in Kaduna State. You can find details on page 5. Adeleke moves to change Oshun logo, 6 assemblies approval. Constitution review reps to meet governors, leaders of 18 political parties and others. 4.1 billion naira property fraud, AFCC recovers, hands over 324 houses to Kanu pensioners. You can find details on page 5. Senate threatens to debit account of bank over on page 358 billion naira anchor borrowers loan. May summon former CBN governor on ways and means overdraft. You can find details on page 4. Still on impeachment in Edo State, we have Edo Assembly directs CJ to constitute panel to probe the deputy governor. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Punch newspaper, on the 10 trillion naira loan, Senate uncovers fresh infraction and summon Cardoso. Detail on page 32. Reps to squeeze minister over 300 million naira malaria loan spending, and I hope that you'll find detail concerning that. Federal government, state, local government areas to share 10 trillion naira allocation in 2023. This is coming from the NEITI. And the big story is talking about reign of terror. That's the caption here. 165 farmers killed in March. Farms deserted as bandits demand 3 billion naira. The writer following said 130 farmers have been killed in 4 Benue local government areas. 28 in Sokoto State. Sorghum production falls by 90% in Borno State. Benue farmers lose 1.1 billion naira to attack. Sokoto to growers pay 3 billion naira ransom, and then we're having 5 million naira paid in Delta. And this is just a little talking about or picking few states out of the many other states that are going through terror of one way or another. And we hope that we'll be able to overcome this. Rains are actually coming, and we hope our farmers will be able to access their farmlands without fear of being killed or their products being taken by bandits. You can find more detail of that on page 2. Federal government names 15 terrorism financiers, BDCs and plans sanctioned. Federal government names 15 terrorism financiers, BDCs, and then plans sanctioned for them. And we hope to have the names of companies and their pictures so that Nigerians can be aware and to know that the government is actually working. Dangote, MTN, and others lose 1.7 trillion naira to naira depreciation. This is a report. You can read more detail on page 32. And on the Delta bloodbath, governor meets Tinubu. National Assembly demand thorough probe. Abducted editor asthmatic family laments. NUJ demands release. You can find detail on page 42. Parties in frightened, parallel primaries wasting INEC resources. This is coming from the INEC chairman Yakubu. You can find detail inside the paper. We still have a picture story as well where we can see the vice president. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you. But before we continue further, we'd love to take a time out here. Quite a lot to say concerning the issue we are having in Delta, also where we're seeing that the court have denied bail for Kanu, and then also we're seeing other smaller stories on the front page of the paper concerning how much Dangote and MTN have lost as a result of the Naira depreciation. So when we come back, we will continue with the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper. We've seen that the governor of Delta State have met with the president to brief him on what is happening in the state and the fact that they are doing all that they can to actually apprehend those who are behind the killing of the 70 military men. And then also we're seeing how much FEC will be spending on federal government, state and local government areas concerning allocation. And we are also seeing the issue of sport, also where we are seeing the new Super Eagle coach and many other stories that we have looked at. So we'd love to hear your view, your opinion concerning any of the story by dropping it on our Facebook and YouTube. I still have Rachel Taze with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper.
The big story on Daily: Independent Delta killings. Oborowori meets Tinubu, says situation now under control. Confirms embattled community now deserted completely. Mercenaries may be behind killing of 16 soldiers, says Akpabio. Koma community never killed any soldier, reps member. Says soldiers have burned down community, killed many people. At the top of the paper, reps propose 5 months paid leave for mourning widows. Subsidy called Naira float increased federal, state, local government allocation to 10.143 trillion Naira in 2023. Zenith Bank appoints Adora as the first female GMD and CEO. FRSC stops conveying of humans on trailers over death of 10 on Abuja Highway. On impeachment, Edo Assembly directs CJ to set up panel on petition against Shaibu. IYC alleges military killed 40 Bayelsa community residents, condemns killing of 16 officers, soldiers in Delta community. And if there was any, response back by soldiers, there will definitely be civilians killed. And I know that that part of the story might try to be like swept under the carpet and all of that, but I know that a lot of civilians have died in the hands of the soldiers in that community. In the first place, you're not supposed to be there for a community dispute. You're there and now your men have been killed. So yes, I know that civilians have been victims in this crossfire whatsoever. Even if that part of the story will not be said, there is 100 possibility and chances there. And eventually the truth will uncover gradually, and then more will be out. You can find details on page 29. Delta killings, Nigeria at risk of losing sovereignty, says NNPP. Southeast violence, count me out. I suspect some people in government, says Nnamdi Kanu. Says he will restore peace in the region 2 minutes if released. Kerry calls for differentiated energy transition for Africa. You can find details on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On the Guardian newspaper concerning unlicensed digital lenders, loan sharks target poor citizens, exploit, violate privacy rights. Now we're seeing that about 215 lenders have been registered, 43 delisted, and over 71 apps operating illegally. Loan apps deploy compound interest rate, and then here we're having firms exploit, abuse users' data. And I think this is not the first time we're seeing this story, Rachel, where we've talked about people who get involved in all of these loan sharks and then what the government is doing to regulate it. And here we're seeing that about 47 have been delisted, and by about 71 apps have been, they're actually operating illegal. And I think before people get involved in all of this, you should know which one is legally registered and which is not legally registered. We know how they evade privacy. You see, sending SMS to all your phone numbers, telling them so person collected this amount. If you don't pay, we're exposing and all of that. And I think the government needs to interfere in all of this thing, do what they can do about it, so we don't have all of this back and forth concerning this loan shark and then the danger they are causing to Nigerians as well. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we are seeing on education, NASU SANU strike leaves certificate applicants stranded, and it's very, very important that something is being done. Imagine if you're actually looking for your transcript so you could actually go either abroad or run for your master's in another place, and as a result of that you can't do it because we're having a non-academic union being on strike. So we hope that the government will please listen to the apply, do something so that the senior lecturers as well as the non-academic staff union can go back to work. Banks show sign of illiquidity, borrowed over 24 trillion naira from CBN less than 3 months. That's a business story you can find on page 17. Criminalizing importation of Adire Kampala fabric, reps urges federal government. Criminalizing importation of Adire Kampala fabrics, rep urges the federal government. You can find detail of that on page 3. Again, court refuses Kanu bail over terrorism charges. Delta governor briefs Tinubu on Okwama killings. You can find more on page 4. And on reprisal, Ijaw Youth Council raises alarm over inversion killing of 40 residents. Now we're seeing a response where we're seeing military denying that, and here we're seeing Ijaw Youth also saying the fact that they are killing some of these residents. We just hope that sanity will come back to that part, because this can actually lead to a full-blown war if something is not being done about that. Man backs live jail for defiling neighbor 11-year-old daughter. That's on a human angle. Very sad story. You can find detail on page 9. Also, Nigerians Federating Unit share 10.14 trillion naira in 2023. This is a panorama you can find on page 2, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Olakeluhin family for Ibadan thrown 160 years after. Overdraft to federal government, Senate grills CBN chiefs. The big story, soldiers killing, no one left in community, says governor. Villagers fled into the bush. This is coming from Reps. Oborowori briefs Tinubu Senate House probe attack. You can start with the details on the front page. How Adebuturi applied for production of 200,000 prepaid cards by bank official. Interest rate takes center stage at CBN MPC meets. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2. 42,000 metric tons of grains being shared to states, says Agriculture Minister. We are waiting for it to get to everybody eventually. You can start with the details on the front page. Violence will cease in Southeast after my release, says Nnamdi Kanu. And I believe that if you make such a statement, nobody is going to release you. It means you are the one fueling it, and therefore you are the one who can bring down the fire. You can find details on page 4, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the New Telegraph newspaper. On revenue, Nigeria faces 1 trillion naira gas export deficit. Shipment falls by 16%, and then nation lacks in SDGs. UNDP give a report on that. You can find detail inside the paper. And on the MPC, member cast double on NPR hike, curbing inflation. More data found on page 28. Tinubu seek reps approval for judicial officers' new salaries. More detail on page 2 and 6. Federal, state, local government share 10.143 trillion naira in 2023. Again, court refuses Kanu bail in terrorism charges. The big story: Okwama, 17 officers, soldiers, killers may be mercenaries, says Apabio. Senate probe killing, reject minute silence for civilian casualties for now, and I hope that they also get that as well. They are equally Nigerians. Tinubu Oboruwori hold closed door meeting, killing and assault on security stability of the Niger Delta, coming from Lawan. More detail found on page 3 and 5. Putin warned NATO of World War III, and I hope that whatever it is, if you are interested in the international scene, you can see what the president of Russia have to say concerning that. Party primary infraction disruptive and costly, coming from INEC. SANU NASU strike cripples academic activities in ATBU. Students and lecturers are stranded. More detail on page 30. Africa's rising debt profile suffocating workers, trade union laments. More detail on page 29. And on the issue of the Ways and Means, Senate insists on the total loan recovery, frowns at approval by the former CBN governor. National Assembly extends 2023 budget from March 31st, 2024 to June 30th. Engage the federal government on solution to food crisis. Passes 446 billion naira FRS 2024 budget. More detail on page 2 and 5. And on the Constitution review, reps unveil consultants, reaffirms 2025 completion date. You can find more detail concerning the 5 months being given to widows and other stories as well. Now, on downside, we have a study coming from experts that says calcium and vitamin D may lower cancer risks but raise heart risk. So I think it's really important that you check your intake, do all you have to know to do, and then know how much of calcium you need to take in and how much of vitamin D you need as well, for those who are actually at the risk of having heart disease or who actually have something concerning cancer. More detail can be found on that page 6, and that's all the New Telegraph newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, the big story: how MPC members voted to tighten monetary policy, ensure price stability, as increased inflation rate may trigger another hike in rates ahead of next meeting. Details can be found on page 3. Oyetola commissions road project, boats to attract vessel traffic to One. Naira strengthens against dollar, hit 1,583 to a dollar on official market. Again, court denies Nnamdi Kanu of bail as IPOB leader alleges death plot in DSS custody. Speaker, family members using pseudonym companies to receive multi-billion contracts from Adeleke. Osun APC alleges. Impeachment saga, Edo Assembly orders CJ to set up 7-man panel investigate petition against Deputy Governor. You can find details on page 2. We have a picture story showing the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria together with the other MPC ahead of the meetings for what will be the new interest rate. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
And on business day, still concerning the interest rate for Cardoso, the February jumbo rate hike not big enough. Naira show more sign of rebound, and that's the reason why they are looking at increasing the interest rate again, so they can be able to tighten, talking about the monetary policy, and also to increase whatever rate they are supposed to get as a bank to control the Naira. So for those who are interested in that, you can look up that story on the front page of the paper and continue on page 30. Manufacturers' credit sale growth shows a rising inflation. You can find more inside the paper. And we have insurance sector growth rising on policy enforcement, seek collaboration to increase contribution to the economy. More detail in the paper. And we're still talking about Adiora becoming the first female GMD of Senate Bank. More detail inside the paper. And that's Autumn Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, a statement from Radcliffe. Man United can't afford Bellingham or Mbappe. You can find details at the back page. Man City, AC Milan orders for summer friendlies. You can find details on page 3. Griezmann's world record run set to end after the Atletico Madrid star pulls out of France squad. Man City risks points deduction if found guilty of 115 FFP charges. We have Inzaghi may replace Pochettino at Chelsea. Fenerbahce considering Super League withdrawal. You can find details on page 3. Ronaldo to miss Portugal match. Liverpool set to splash $217 million on Nkapé or Wits. And then we have Bayern cools interest in 70 million euro rated Arojo. You can find details on page 3. Premier League La Liga clubs chase Chukwueze. We have Sabalanke's boyfriend dies while supporting her in Miami. This is a sad one. You can find details at the back page. We have Bukayo Saka's Nigerian girlfriend unveiled. More details can be found on page 6. Trabzonspor to file criminal complaints against Osai Samuel. Details can be found on page 6. The big story on the paper, Ghana-Mali friendlies, Uwobi Wabili, 8 others hit Super Eagles camp. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
All right, let's round it up with another business paper, which is the Business Times, where we are having federal government to borrow $1 billion from World Bank for IDPs. More detail on page 6. SEC partnership to build knowledge-driven capital market on page 11. Why Nigeria's inflation rate is on upward swing. This is an analysis you can find on page 2. No more mining license without local value addition. Forced labor generate $236 billion in legal profit yearly. 11 discos got 273.34 billion funding for meter purchase. This is a report on page 5. Federal government, states and local government areas to share 10.143 trillion naira in 2023, coming from the NEITI. We have a picture story on the front page of the president and others during the visit to the solar hydro project in Niger State recently. You can draw out to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you, and that is how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sally.
And thank you to our viewers, thank you to our supporters, and also the crew members. So until we come tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.